Hello everyone, thank you for tuning into this video. This is going to be an informational video on the Syrian conflict, US involvement in Syria, and how we got to this point today. So I know a lot of people may or may not have opinions on the airstrikes that took place last night by the US on Damascus in Syria. So it's just like the analogy I use, or that I'm going to use, is saying you like or dislike a movie when you've only seen a scene from it, one part of the movie. So there's a lot of history behind this conflict, so I'm going to kind of clear up the air here so you can make your opinion up for yourself. So I got my timeline right here. As we know, the airstrikes that took place last night were in response to the chemical weapons attack that allegedly President Bashar al-Assad of Syria used on his own people. And the airstrikes struck Syrian research facilities that were said to be making those chemical weapons attacks, or the chemical weapons that Bashar al-Assad used in the attacks on his people. But after that chemical weapons attack that took place a week ago from today, US allies like France and the UK expressed their objection to it and said that they would retaliate. But in response to that and the Trump tweets, President Trump's tweets in regards to the chemical weapons attack, Russia declared that it would destroy the ships and or planes that attack Syria. So this is a big deal. Like, we struck them, and Russia said that they would destroy the ships and the planes that struck Syria. So how did we get to this point? Well, we have to go back to 1925 at the Geneva Convention. This was after World War I. The leaders from the countries that fought in the war came together to make plans for continued world peace. And we know that that didn't last very long. So at the Geneva Convention, something that was drafted was called the Geneva Protocol. And that is a treaty prohibiting the use of chemicals and biological weapons in international conflict. So that's why it's such a big deal that someone is using chemical weapons halfway across the world, because it's against international law and it can't be tolerated by the international community. The question is, why is it the US that's going to take care of it? But anyways, so that was 1925 in the Geneva Convention, post-World War I. March 2011 is when the Syrian civil war started. On one side of that, you have Bashar al-Assad, President Bashar al-Assad, democratically elected leader of the Syrian government, and his military, the Syrian army. And on the other side, you have the rebels who are trying to overthrow Assad. People like ISIS and these radical militants. Also, you have the Kurds and other ragtag militant groups. So that was in March 2011 when the Syrian civil war started. A year and a half later is when Obama declared a red line for chemical weapons. He basically said that if Syria specifically, because at the time it was thought, or it was said by our trustworthy intelligence agencies, that Bashar al-Assad, president of Syria, had chemical weapons and intended to use them on his own people. So that was August 2012. And the following year to the month, August 2013, Assad allegedly used those chemical weapons on its own people. And it was said that he used sarin, which it can't be true. Because if you saw the videos and the photos of those things that took the events that took place with the sarin attack, it's mostly like they use children to persuade you to get you on board with this war and further US intervention in Syria. But the thing about sarin is it's very not contagious, but it spreads and affects people very easily. You come into contact with it, you're gonna get sick and possibly die from it, just from touching someone who's been poisoned by it. But in the photos and the videos, you see it's just like mostly children being held by their parents or by adults without full-on hazmat gear, protective gear. So that's a lie. I'm not saying it wasn't chemical weapons, but it wasn't sarin. So our intelligence agencies, who are the smartest of the smart and have our best interest in mind, say it's sarin gas, but it's not. Like, what else are they lying about? That's how I see it. But anyways, in response to these chemical weapons attacks and talks of U.S. intervention in Syria, citizen Donald Trump, who wasn't even considering running for president at the time, expressed his disdain for U.S. intervention in Syria, which is quite comical. What will we get from bombing Syria besides more debt and possible long-term conflict? Obama needs congressional approval. Whoa. Again, to our very foolish leader, do not attack Syria. If you do, many very bad things will happen, and from that fight, the U.S. gets nothing. At real Donald Trump. This is in September of 2013. This is a few weeks after the chemical weapons attack by Assad, allegedly. Russia is sending a fleet of ships to the Mediterranean. Obama's war in Syria has the potential to widen into a worldwide conflict. Wow. Life comes at you fast, Donald. Okay, that's enough of those tweets, as funny as they are. So, moving forward, 1 month after the chemical weapon, 2 months after the chemical weapons attack in Syria in August of 2013. This is in October of 2013. This is a week-long battle in the city of Saddad. This is a conflict between the Syrian government and some of the Syrian rebels, specifically a faction called Jaish al-Islam. And Jaish al-Islam is, they consist of members of Al-Qaeda. Well, in Syria, they're called al-Nusra, but they're essentially a faction of Al-Qaeda. So you have al-Nusra and the Free Syrian Army, which are moderate rebels fighting against the Syrian government. So this is Jaish al-Islam. They contain those two groups of people. Jaish al-Islam overran the town in October of 2013, killing nearly 50 Syrian civilians. Rebels used the Syrian civilians as human shields by putting them in literally cages spread throughout the city. This is a small city. It's like a village. I think there's like 3,500 or like 3,000 people there. So they used those citizens as human shields so that the Syrian army wouldn't just airstrike them. So the Syrian army had to come like on foot and by tank or whatever. And they eventually liberated the people 1 week after the Jaish al-Islam overran the town. And the Syrian troops, they lost over 100 Syrian troops in the process. So Bashar al-Assad, he sacrificed over 100 troops to save Syrian people, but you're supposed to believe that he gassed his own people because he's a ruthless dictator. Okay, those are facts. That's not my opinion. Okay, that was October 2013. We're going to go to September 2016, 3 years later. Russia launches cruise missiles and kills 30 Mossad and Western officers. And this is from the Times of Israel. So if you don't know, Mossad is the Israeli counterpart to the CIA. It's Israel's intelligence agency. So Russian state media reported that Israeli Mossad agents and other foreign military officers were killed in Aleppo on Tuesday in a Russian missile strike. The Russians blew up a bunker they were suspected of providing intel to ISIS and the moderate rebels. 30 Israeli and Western officers died when they were hit by .3 caliber cruise missiles fired by Russian warships in a foreign officers coordination operations room. So they were in an operations room coordinating the moderate rebels. In addition to the Mossad agents, the Russian report claimed military officials from the United States, CIA, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom's MI6, and Turkey. Virtually every country hated by Iran, Syria, and Russia were killed in the strike, according to battlefield sources. So they were there. They conducted the investigation, looked at the bodies, and identified the where the countries that these people belong to. Okay, so a year after that, April of last year, Assad uses chemical weapons on his own people again, allegedly, attracting international scrutiny when he's got the civil war and he's got the US meddling in his country. Okay. 3 days later, after the chemical weapons attack, Trump launches 60 Tomahawk missiles on the airbase. I remember that very well. I mean, it was only a year ago, and a lot of people forgot about that. But so the current situation, well, before last week's chemical weapons attack, is that Assad, President Bashar al-Assad of Syria and the Syrian government, he's basically defeated the rebels. He's on the verge of victory. He's liberated thousands of Syrian civilians from ISIS, al-Nusra, and other rebel groups, militant groups. So last Wednesday, April 4th, Trump pushes for quick military withdrawal, and that's from the Washington Post. Withdrawal from Syria, which is a good thing for Syria, Russia, and Iran. They don't want the US there because they're our enemies. Saturday, April 7th, this is 3 days later, Assad launches another gas attack on his own people. So why would he do that? We'll come back to that. But on Monday, this Monday, 2 days after Assad allegedly gassed his own people, the Israeli Air Force strikes the T4 airbase, killing 14 people, mostly Iranians. And so Israel had almost immediate response. And throughout this week, France and the UK have declared that they had made plans to retaliate and they would strike Syria. And Trump also, he tweeted multiple times that military force is imminent in Syria. So in response to those threats, Russia declares that it will destroy the planes and the ships that attack Syria. I mentioned that already. And yesterday, Friday, April 13th, US launches precision airstrikes. So it's quite the situation we're in. But so there are some things I think you should consider before making a fully informed opinion on this topic, because I know there's a lot of history behind the Syrian conflict. I just kind of gave you a short version, kind of highlighted some of the things that you need to know. But considerations, Syria did not ask for the US to be in its country. It's allied with Russia and Iranian contractors to help purge ISIS from its country. And the fact of the matter is Syria and Russia are defeating ISIS. So if we're attacking the President Assad and the Syrian government, we are helping ISIS. And that's not just hyperbole. Our airstrikes last night, ISIS took advantage of that. And yeah, so we have to consider that. And the questions I have about this whole narrative is, well, as I've kind of highlighted throughout the course of the civil war in Syria, is that the President Bashar al-Assad has been fighting for over 7 years to purge ISIS from his country and to liberate the Syrian people. So my first question, why does he go through all that and sacrifice Syrian army troops, spend a lot of money to save those people, if he's just going to gas them? Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Attracting international scrutiny and pissing off the United States, which a lot of countries know you don't do. The second question I have is, why would he do this when he's on the verge of winning the civil war in Syria? Number 3, why the timing just doesn't make sense. Why would he do this 3 days after Donald Trump announced plans to pull out of Syria? That's a good thing for Assad. The last thing he wants to do is piss off the US even more and keep us there. And number 4 is probably the most important question. Who benefits from a gas attack being blamed on Assad? Who benefits least? Assad, the United States for furthering US intervention, spending millions and trillions of dollars in further US intervention in the Middle East. And you know who else doesn't benefit is the troops of Americans, the American troops. That's a fact. That's not my opinion. So who benefits from a Syrian gas attack blamed on Assad? Well, that's a topic for another day, because there are some people who definitely benefit from it, including people who don't want Syria to succeed, people who want the U.S. to stay in the conflict in the Middle East. That's a fact. That's not my opinion either. So nothing that I said in this video is conspiracy. It's just the cold hard facts. So use those facts when making up your own decisions as the conflict furthers, because it's not done yet. This is just one step, and we're still waiting for Russia to respond to the airstrikes we did last night. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I'll tell you, Syria has been in the crosshairs of the United States since before 2000, since before 9/11. That's not a conspiracy either. So thank you all for watching. I hope this is valuable. Please give it a thumbs up if you learned, and let me know if you want me to do any more videos about this kind of stuff. Geopolitics is something I'm very interested in. And comment below if you have any questions, or if you want to answer any of those questions I just asked. I'd love to hear your opinions, because I haven't gotten an answer for why would Assad gas his own people that he's trying to save? Why would he do this on the verge of winning his civil war? And why would he do it 3 days after the US announces plans to withdraw from Syria? And who benefits from the gas attack? So feel free to answer any of those questions. Thank you all for watching, and see you soon.